Welcome, everyone, to Buddha's Center. It's great to be here tonight, to have all the causes and conditions, to be able to listen to the stage of the path to enlightenment requires an incredible amount of merit. And I appreciate that the fact that you've come here tonight to listen to these teachings and allow me to share them with you. We've gone over and over the preliminaries in the classes, and we've talked about how to generate the merit field, and we've talked about how to invite all sentient beings here. So tonight we're going to just do an abbreviated version of that, get right to the prayers so that we can get right into the topic. We've entered into the great scope of the foundation of all good qualities, and we're discussing bodhicitta. And we're doing an incredibly deep dive into the stages that are required to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment in one of the specific practices called the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya, Master Asanga, down through the extensive deeds lineage and Master Atisha and so forth, and ends up to us because of the kindness of our lamas. And we've been doing an extremely magnified look at each one of those steps and using different sources to find out where did these steps kind of come from, and then what are some practices we can use that some of these incredible masters have come to realize to enhance our practice and get to the point where we can generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment quicker than we would be able to without these precious instructions. So let's just begin by setting the incredible motivation of bodhicitta, wishing to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, attending this teaching to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, knowing the only way that we can fulfill all of our needs and all of sentient beings' needs is to become a Buddha. This is the only way. There's no second way. The only way to become the most reliable, blissful guide in the universe is to go through all of these stages that we find in the stages of the path to enlightenment, and then become a Buddha. And that is the only being in the universe who fulfills all of the qualities necessary to be the most helpful guide for sentient beings in the universe. And we all will be able to become that guide in dependence upon the instructions that our teachers have been so kind to share with us, because they realized those incredible minds that we're talking about when we look at the minds we can realize within the Lam Rim, independence upon the same instructions that they're giving to us. So let's begin by setting this motivation of bodhicitta. Let's imagine the merit field and the space in front of us, all of the enlightened beings to act as our support, as our guide, as to give us courage to see beings in the universe who are just like us, who transformed into reliable guides. Just as Master Dignaga says in the Pramana Samuccaya, he says, the one who transformed into the reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector, to you I make prostrations. We see it doesn't say here the one who just was the reliable guide. It says the one who transformed into the reliable guide. How did that transformation take place? It was transformation took place by being motivated to help all sentient beings and find a way, find a key to unlock the door to, the cyclic existence, and be free from the jail of cyclic existence, and unlock the door of cyclic existence, which is a prison, and unlock the door to infinite happiness. So let's look at these guides who are in front of us as guides that would be that are exactly who we will become. So imagine the merit field and the space in front of us, all the beings, all of the root lamas, Buddha Shakyamuni, the extensive deeds lineage, the profound view lineage, the lineage of blessings, all the holy lamas of the Nyingma Kagyu Sakya Gelug tradition, any enlightened being that you have a connection to. Imagine they're in the space in front of you so that you in all of your lives can connect with perfect lamas. You can connect with these incredible beings who have the stages of the path instructions and who have all of the precious things that you need to do in order to achieve all of the things you've ever wanted to achieve. And that is freedom from suffering and the immense and an immense amount of bliss. And really, if you look at your daily life and you look at the people that you love and you see that they have to suffer, you don't want that to occur. And if you could figure out a way for them to never have to suffer again and have the most amount of bliss possible, you would give that to them. And these teachings that we're going through now are there to convince us that every single being in the universe is worthy of that same exact kind of attention. So we're imagining these beings who've realized this in the space in front of us, and at the same time, they've not only realized that the ultimate mind in the world is the mind that aspires to enlightenment, the wish to become a Buddha, the wish to become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings, as Lord Maitreya defines it in the Abhisama Alamkara. All of the Buddhas have searched throughout all minds and found that the mind that aspires to enlightenment is the most precious motivation in the universe. There isn't anything more precious in the universe that can be generated. And this mind that is so precious is something that we can generate, and we will generate in dependence upon these practices. So we see these beings in the space in front of us, looking into our eyes with immense love and compassion, with these qualities that we will have in the future of perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect skillful means, perfect power, perfect wisdom, this kind of perfect, excellent quality of knowing reality and diversity and having a concern for all sentient beings. We will have these qualities. So we have these guides in the space in front of us. We're leaving imprints in our mind, and to tell our minds that the most important thing, the source, the foundation of all of our good qualities is a teacher, and that we want to, in all our lives, never be separated from our teachers. So let's just think of this for a moment as we invite all of the enlightened beings to be here with us, to give us strength and courage to be able to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And now we invite all sentient beings to be our guests. Based on all of the preliminaries we've gone over and over and over again, looking at the practices of equanimity and looking at the practices of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment and equalizing and exchanging self with others, and the combination of those practices, and see how your mind reacts as you invite all sentient beings here to be your guests, to lead them in this practice the way that a Buddha would be able to do. A Buddha is able to emanate a body for every single sentient being in the universe who is there to be able to be helped. So it's for this reason that we're laying the tracks within our mind to be able to do such a thing. So imagine that you're in the way that Buddhas help sentient beings is by teaching the truth of suchness, by teaching the stages of the path to enlightenment, that when motivated by bodhicitta, lead to complete Buddhahood. So we invite all sentient beings here. And when we look at the instructions on the stages of the path to enlightenment, when we're looking to give sentient beings happiness and make sentient beings be free from suffering, and we have this idea of altruism that we generate with desire to definitely take on the task to free each and every single sentient being, we see that we begin with our friends when we look at the objective observation of this meditation we're doing around this idea of wanting beings to have happiness, wanting beings to be free from suffering, and taking on ourselves that task. We see that we first invite our friends, and then we invite neutrals, and then we invite difficult people, and we see if our mind is equally willing to be helpful to all those sentient beings in the universe that we've been connected to, and that we sometimes may find difficult. Are we able to see the dependent origination? Are we able to see that when someone is engaging in a relationship with us where we find them difficult, first, are we able to see that this is a manifestation of our karma? Second, are we able to see that they're having a manifestation of their afflictions occur, if they're yelling or if they're angry? So there's two things going on. If they're behaving in a way that is seemingly non-virtuous, I can only take things at face value. They're under the sway of afflictions. Just like when I'm acting or behaving in a negative way, I'm under the sway of afflictions. Am I able to see this commonality that both of us are under the sway of afflictions? Am I able to see when, that no matter what, everybody is equally worthy of having happiness and being free from suffering? Am I able to see that about every single sentient being in the universe? And this is the question we all have to ask ourselves. And if we aren't bodhisattvas and we haven't, or just about to be, We probably have a little difficulty in having this equal idea of willingness to help, equal compassion for every single sentient being in the universe. So let's look at our minds, use the mirror of the Dharma and the teachings that we've gone over week after week to see if these things are being effective, to see if our morning meditation is being effective. And whether or not, as weeks go by and years go by, these teachings are having a profound effect on our minds because that's what they were built to do. And if they aren't doing that, we aren't investing in them in a proper way, or we aren't following them in a correct way. We need to kind of readjust something if there isn't some kind of experience after not after a week or two. I mean, after some time, if day after day, these practices aren't producing some kind of effect that's a positive transformation, one should look into what one's practices and maybe consult a teacher and see if there's something maybe more that you could do, or even maybe less that you could do, but more of another thing, to really figure out what it is that's going to be necessary to achieve happiness and freedom from suffering. So invite all these sentient beings here and imagine that they're able to hear this teaching in their own individual languages at their own individual aptitudes. And as you invite every single sentient being in the universe here, again, friends, neutrals, and enemies, hell beings, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, demigods, gods, all beings in the universe, as you invite them here, I'll read the prayer from the King of Prayers, that's traditionally read by teachers before a teaching. In the language of the gods, Nagas, and Yakshas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Lai ke dan le dan na jin ke drubon da da mi ke nan dan dro wa kun ji dra nan ji tsan ba tan che ke du da gi chi ten do. Now that all sentient beings are here as our guest, here we've led them to be able to hear the teachings for beings of three capacities. Imagine they're looking also into the eyes of the beings in the merit field, these enlightened beings who have so much love for us. Imagine they're looking into the eyes of all sentient beings, and sentient beings like you are having a profound experience, being able to see such a massive amount of beings who care about you so much. I know when we're around our precious Lama, I know when I was around Namgyo Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, the experience of the love that I felt for me was not like any other love I ever experienced. When he looked into my eyes, I knew he deeply cared for me. And I just can't imagine if there were hundreds of beings just like him in a room looking into my eyes like that. It would be overwhelming. So this is the kind of experience that all sentient beings are having when you're doing this kind of meditation. This is the kind of power. This is the power of the basis. When we look at the merit field and we look at the excellent qualities that the Buddhas have, the excellent quality of body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. When we look at the great treatise and the stage of the path to enlightenment, and we see why the three jewels are the foundation, the real only worthy refuge, the real protection for us, the only protection for us from the fears of cyclic existence, and for the bodhisattvas, the fears of the obstructions to omniscience. So it's amazing that when we recognize this, we have this kind of protection within our life. And just imagine that all sentient beings are experiencing this kind of protection, this kind of feeling, this kind of moment that all sentient beings can have, where they're just being able to hit a pause button on the hot suffering of the hells, and the cold suffering of the hells, and the hunger and thirst of the hungry ghosts, and the ignorance and the searching and the fear of the animal realm, and the worrisome minds of all the human beings that you know, and the demigods that are so jealous, and the gods that are just sitting in a ignorance is bliss and are going to have a huge fall that'll be coming, just like the form and formless realm beings. We think about this so deeply and invest in this and imagine that these beings who are having all of these experiences that are distracting them, whether they're blissful or there's so much torture they can't imagine it. Imagine these distractions are just removed for a moment so that these teachings can be heard. Imagine that the merit field now transforms into Vulture Peak Mountain, Rajagriha, where the second turning of the wheel of Dharma was given of the Heart Sutra, where the Buddha gave the definitive teaching on the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena, where the Buddha came to tell us that everything is coming through the power of our mind, merely through the power of imputation, that there's nothing from the side of the object. There's nothing from in terms of self, a person, and phenomena that can be found within the designated object to intrinsically exist as it within the basis of designation. So when we look at the designated object and we look at the basis of designation that we're designating the object, we're thinking that it's the true referent. The label is the true referent of the object, that label is it, that there's some designated object that I'm calling chair that inherently exists from its own side over there. That's a true referent of the label that I'm giving it. But when we look at the basis of designation chair and we look at the designated object chair, the basis of designation of chair, and we look at the designated object chair, we'll find that those two things are mutually exclusive because we won't be able to find the designated object within the parts intrinsically of the chair or intrinsically separate from the parts of the chair. And if it can't be intrinsically found within the parts of the chair or intrinsically separate from the chair, if it can't be intrinsically one with the chair or intrinsically separate from the chair, then it can't be intrinsically existent because those are the only two options for an intrinsically existent chair. And chair is the designated object. So this sounds like a lot of mumbo jumbo and a lot of words, but what this does is it starts to undo appearance, the way things appear to us, having a reality that they don't have. They appear to have a mode of existence that is inherent existence, intrinsic existence, existence to be established right within the object. They appear to have that, but the reality is that they don't have that. And the only way that we'll be able to kind of apprehend things in a way that tallies with reality, because that's the first thing that we'll kind of be able to do, unless we're seeing emptiness or a Buddha, is to start to unravel it by using the reasoning that brings us to the conclusion that things don't intrinsically exist because they don't exist intrinsically one or intrinsically separate from their parts. So when we try to find this intrinsically existent designated object, it's not findable. There'll be an unfinding, a non-finding that occurs. And this is what the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge is talking about. And chairs aren't such a big deal unless we're really, really into chairs. And that's like the basis of our motivation for everything we do, good and bad in life. If it was just chairs, but when we look at it, refers to everything in the universe, and that feeling that things intrinsically exist, this belief that things intrinsically exist causes me to give them some sort of a kind of concrete kind of status, and that concrete status that isn't correct because it's coming from an incorrect evaluation of the object. That concrete status that I think it has causes me to act quite foolishly. And the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge is where the Buddha came to give us the medicine that stops our grasping at things in a way that they don't exist. And then by doing that, that concrete kind of reality we think that they have isn't there for us to kind of act foolishly about. And we do all kinds of foolish things, don't we? When we are attached to something, we do all kinds of foolish things when we're attached to our bodies, when we're attached to our reputation, when we're attached to money, when we're attached to our loved ones, when we're attached, fill in the blank fill in, as again, Jeffrey Hopkins would say, fill in your own personal madness and think about the kind of foolish things you do or think about, or the time you waste because of attachment. And that's time that you can't get back if it's only time. But it's usually just a disturbance in the mind that creates some sort of movement towards the object that says, get out of my way. I'm going to that. That's what I want. And that's such a disturbed state of mind. It's not a peaceful state of mind. So we see that. And if there's something that I'm concretizing and I feel is awful, what am I going to do? What do you feel is awful? What do you think is just a terrible, awful thing? Who do you think's an awful person? I'm saying this because think about what occurs when you designate this as an awful, this or that, he or she, as awful. Then there's an inappropriate mental kind of conduct, inappropriate attention that can take place then, that then makes it even darker, worse, like exaggerates the negative qualities even more so of this thing. Because I believe that it's bad, and I do the same thing with attached things, but we landed on anger. So I haven't removed myself from the object I'm angry at. So, okay. And I haven't gotten rid of anger altogether. So, okay. So it's angry time. And by engaging in that, because I'm not trained, I'll convince myself with more and more reasons why that object is worthy of my anger. If I don't have mind training, if I'm not trained to kind of catch myself, when it talks about in Geshe Langri Tamba's text, where it said in the 8 verses for training the mind, when it says, as soon as a disturbing emotion arises endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. But if you're not trained to kind of know to look for these things, when that disturbing emotion arises, all you'll do is add gasoline to the fire. You won't firmly face and avert it. You'll have inappropriate attention that makes it bigger and makes it even more convincingly awful. That object is, I'm more convinced now that thing's horrible. I'm more convinced that you are a terrible person. I see you as a terrible person. I concretize you as a terrible person. I think about all the reasons you're a terrible person. And by the minute, I'm making you more of a terrible person in my mind. And you never started out as an inherently existent terrible person in the first place. And that good thing that I want so much never started as an inherently existent good thing. So, and as I'm knocking people over to get to the thing I want, because I think it inherently exists, it naturally appears as inherently existing, as inherently attractive. I'm getting to this thing that never satisfies me. So one is like this salt water of dissatisfaction, and the other is just a thing that, like, if I had to experience it all the time, I wouldn't even be able to handle it. It hurts my mind so badly. And both of these things are coming from one culprit, and that's self-grasping ignorance. Believing that the self of person and self of phenomena inherently exist. Inherent existence is the object of negation. Existence is not the object of negation. Self of person and self of phenomena exist. The Buddha never came to tell us things don't exist. Plenty of people said that things didn't exist, and nihilism has been around forever. The Buddha didn't come to teach nihilism. The Buddha came to teach a middle way view that was so profound. He sat for 49 days before teaching the Four Noble Truths. So profound. And it's this idea that we have about everything that causes us to cycle in cyclic existence over and over and over and over and over again. Believing that self of person and self of phenomena, person being me and person being you, the reifying view of the perishing aggregates only being related to me, I, and mine, but the grasping itself of person related to me grasping at myself or grasping at you as inherently existent, and the grasping itself of phenomena is me grasping at anything other than person as being inherently existent. So when you hear this jargon, grasping itself of person and grasping itself of phenomena, that's what it's referring to. Grasping itself of person is grasping at me or grasping at you or another person as being inherently existent. The view of the perishing aggregates that you hear about so much is grasping at just the self of person related to me. If I'm grasping at you as being inherently existent, this isn't the view of the perishing aggregates. The view of the perishing aggregates is grasping at I and mine as being inherently existent. Inherently existent I, inherently existent mine. I inherently exist. Then again, this example we gave before, I inherently exist, grasping at the self of person, the view of the perishing aggregates. My hand inherently exists. My hand is phenomena, grasping at inherent existence of phenomena. My hand is mine. That's grasping at. My hand is inherently existent mine. That's grasping at mine as being inherently existent, grasping at the self of person, the view of the perishing aggregates of mine and being inherently existent. So in the Prasangika view, the view of the perishing aggregates is grasping at I as being inherently existent and mine as being inherently existent. What is mine? It's a mine. Mine. It's this thought of mine. An illustration of mine is my hand, but my hand is phenomena. It's not person because I'm not my hand. So we have to be able to kind of look at the different structures that the Buddha is talking about. And you'll hear these words, and hopefully that was a little bit helpful to kind of know what those words are talking about. Grasping at self of person is grasping at person being like person Jeff or person you other than Jeff. Grasping at self of phenomena is grasping at things like, emptiness as being inherently existent. Whoa. And chairs and boats and cars and giraffes and stuff. Giraffes, chairs and cars and boats and pillows and stuff. Giraffes are persons. A person imputed on among the five aggregates. So giraffes are persons. So I apologize to the giraffes for not allowing them to be persons. So grasping at giraffes would be grasping at persons. Sounds strange, right? So look into this knowledge because this is the knowledge that we need. If I'm saying that its independence in Arya Nagarjuna in the Mulya Madhyamika Karika, the fundamental treatise on the middle, says that ceasing of karma and afflictions is nirvana. Karma and afflictions arise from conceptualization of inappropriate attention, which in turns arises from an elaboration of self-grasping ignorance. Elaborations cease into emptiness. So Arya Nagarjuna is saying there, and Buddha is in Arya Nagarjuna is talking about what Buddha is talking about. Arya Nagarjuna is showing us why not knowing what the truth of the heart sutra is a major problem. Because if you don't know that all things lack inherent existence, then you have self-grasping ignorance. And if you reverse that quote, you see that from self-grasping ignorance, what is self-grasping ignorance? Grasping at the self of person and grasping at the self of phenomena as being inherently existent. If you grasp at the self of person and grasp at the self of phenomena as being inherently existent, then inappropriate attention arises. Inappropriate attention arises where you will see attractive qualities on things that you see as, things that are pleasurable, give you a feeling of pleasure. And then you will have inappropriate attention about things that you will find unattractive, that give you a feeling of displeasure. And then other things you won't ruminate about, but they'll just appear to you to be inherently existent. And this will be because of an beginningless time, this imprints that make things like that. So you have a neutral feeling about this other stuff that you don't find attractive or unattractive, that you don't find to have a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling. So this inappropriate attention occurs because you've decided that there's an inherently existent self of person or phenomena, and then you move your mind towards that object and find it attractive or unattractive. And that attractiveness or unattractiveness, where did it come from? It came from this belief that those things inherently exist. So now you not only have an item that you think inherently exists, now you've built something on top of it. Now you have inherently existent attractiveness, inherently existent unattractiveness, or just inherent existent neutral feeling. So you have this now. So this is what's occurring. So now, because you think this thing inherently exists as attractive, then, wow, think about this inappropriate attention that occurs that then makes you run towards the object. And this is the attachment that occurs. This subtle affliction of this inappropriate attention, where you view this thing as attractive, causes the gross affliction of attachment to come out and have you run towards the object, giving it qualities of attractiveness that it doesn't have, like exaggerating its qualities. That's what attachment does. It exaggerates the qualities of the object. And now, because you're moving towards this, you have this attachment and you're moving towards it. This movement towards it is intention. And this intention is this mental aspect of intention, and then the physical and verbal aspect of intention. And that is karma of your body, speech, and mind. You think, act out physically and mentally because of that attachment. And this, because it's under the influence of an affliction, that action that you did is necessarily contaminated. That's what contaminated karma means. It's contaminated by an affliction. And contaminated karmas give rise to cyclic existence in samsara. So not knowing what the Heart Sutra is talking about is a big problem. It's your whole problem. If samsara is your problem, which is being forced into suffering again and again and again and again and again, beyond your control, lack of freedom is misery. If you don't think that's a good thing, then not knowing the Heart Sutra's meaning is a big problem. Because then if you don't know the Heart Sutra's meaning, it means that you grasp at things as being inherently existent. You apprehend them to be inherently existent if you haven't realized the meaning of the Heart Sutra. And if we look at Sachen Kongan Nimpo's parting from the four attachments, if there is grasping, you do not have the view. If you do not have the three principal paths, one of which being the correct view, the three principal paths of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. If you don't have the correct view, if you don't have one among the three, you can't become a Buddha. So we're here tonight saying, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And no one ever became a Buddha without the wisdom realizing emptiness. So may we generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and then be able to generate the wisdom realizing emptiness and achieve Buddhahood. So the Heart Sutra is the medicine, is the definitive teaching at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, where Buddha taught about the emptiness of inherent existence, and then hidden within it, the five paths, the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagiri at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way, saw the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form, emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics, there is no birth and no cessation, there is no impurity and no purity, there is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as true, since there is no exception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Te ata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son, noble family, thus it is, O son, noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught. And all the Tathagatas were rejoiced. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Just real quickly, you can see there at the end of the Heart Sutra how the Buddha is able to speak in the languages of all of these different beings. Because all of these different realms of beings are praising the words of the Blessed One. So you too will be able to do that one day. Kala jibe ne jodamba ne ngushu to ngushe du chu ngai du do jin du babulama I bujinzi ne sun gondro so la shatselo agasamata jasandara samara be agasamana. Agasamara Tashandara Samaraya Be Deata On Gate Gate Paragate Parasangate Bodhizoa Papa Conchasanti Gaye Tempeduji She Lobodoji Mevodoji Shiva Doji Dragi Baji Metu Bisha Danji Shedingoye Soha Getting Dunyaji Jushawada Mitu Nubejan Dandawada Tumbaji Jimbonson Jodoji Daji Dejan Dendale Desho Dele Sho. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky, pure Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I take refuge until I am enlightened. In the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Now let's read once through Lama Tsongkhapa's Foundation of All Good Qualities, and then we'll go right into the teaching that we've been going over on Bodhicitta and so forth. So let's just read this through first, and let's look at Atisha's lamp for the path to enlightenment, the couple of verses in the beginning that the source of all my good is explaining, and the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim Dudun, the smallest lam rim. When we look at, categorization, this is a small lam rim also, but the abbreviated stages of the path to enlightenment, the lam rim duden, is explaining. And then the medium stages of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining. And then the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining. And then the great treatise on the tantric stages of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa is explaining. So you see these humongous amounts of information that you can find, that you should know, and you will love to know once you get into it and see how they'll help your mind, about this very, you can say, the first stanza, and then there's 3 more stanzas which Atisha uses to expand on the first stanza. So I think you'll get the point when I read it, so I won't cause you any more time loss. Okay, so this is from Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So we'll just read it right from the beginning. Homage to the Bodhisattva, the youthful Manjushri. I pay homage with great respect to the conqueror of the 3 times, to their teaching, and to those who aspire to virtue. Urged by the good disciple Shanchu Wo, I shall illuminate the lamp for the path to enlightenment. Understand that there are 3 kinds of persons. Because of their small, middling, and supreme capacities, I shall write clearly distinguishing their individual characteristics. Know that those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. Those who seek peace alone for themselves, turning away from worldly pleasures and avoiding destructive actions, are said to be of middling capacity. Those who through their personal suffering truly want to end completely all the suffering of others are persons of supreme capacity. Okay, so when we look at the source of all my good, Pabunka Rinpoche, Dorje Chang says in his very short commentary on the foundation of all good qualities, the source of all my good, that there are 4 categories. And those 4 categories are, and then there's actually some subcategories that Pabunka Rinpoche makes as well. And I'll kind of share those with you as we go through them. He says the 4 categories are, the major headings are, how to find a teacher, how to serve and follow the teacher, and so forth, related to the teacher. The next category is what to do once you've found a teacher. The next category is to make aspirations that in this life you're not separated from teachers and good spiritual friends, and you have no kind of obstacles on your path. And then the next category deals with, in all of your lives, never being separated from perfect lamas and being able to get through all of the stages of the path in order to achieve the state of Vajradhara yourself. So Pabunka Rinpoche Dorje Chang says that it can be divided into 4 categories. And I'll plug these in and I'll kind of let you know where it plugs into the root text of the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment as we go through it, because I think it's really valuable. And then we can look at more deeply into what we were looking at in all the previous classes. So first category of Pabunka Rinpoche's categorization is, about the teacher. So in the source of all my good, we see the source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. So here in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, the reliance upon the teacher is the reliance upon the conquerors of the 3 times. And we see the homage being paid to the Buddha, the ultimate teacher. So we connect that in the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. And then and Pabunka Rinpoche says then the next category is what you do once you found a teacher. And then Pabunka says that there's these preliminaries within that before you get into the small scope. And the reason for that is when you look at the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, you have the topic of the teacher actually, and then you have the life of leisure and opportunity there, and then you have basically an explanation, kind of an abbreviation of the persons of 3 capacities that shows you how you could take the essence of a life of leisure and opportunity, kind of like Lama Tsongkhapa handing out flyers to say, here's all the stuff you could do with the human basis that you have that you're probably not doing now and you should get going doing. And then when we look at the proper heading of the Lama Tsongkhapa's Lamrim outline, and we look at the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, the actual small scope teaching starts at death and impermanence. So Pabunka Rinpoche puts this life of leisure and opportunity stanza in a preliminary place. He says that this is under the heading of what you do once you've found a Lama, but it's not quite under the heading of teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity yet, because in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we don't see that start until we get to death and impermanence. And death and impermanence starts at the third stanza here, not the second stanza. You'll find that's interesting in the second stanza, where we get into the life of leisure. And the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, it talks about leisure, eight leisures and 10 opportunities. And Pabunka Rinpoche says that Lama Tsongkhapa just said the 8 leisures in here because he wanted to be definite about something that you have. When we look at the life of the opportunities, and we look about at the 5 internal and 5 external opportunities, look at your great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, you'll see it. The external opportunities, the external endowments, we don't necessarily have all of because the Buddha's not here, and so forth. Check them out. So Tsongkhapa argues that we don't have all 5 necessarily. Other lamas would argue if you have a teacher see them as a Buddha, then you have all the qualities. You think of it for yourself, but I'm just giving you some kind of background information to just kind of tasty up these teachings. So Pabunka first says, first stanza, we talked about the Lama. Now what I'm about to read gets into, until I tell you better, gets into what you do once you've found the Lama, according to Pabunka Rinpoche's commentary. And then this next stanza is a preliminary for what will then be the small scope once we get to the third stanza. I hope you're following me. I hope you're on the ride with me. I know many of you studied with Namgyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche for many years and have had many of others of you around the world have great teachers. So I'm sure you're following me and have studied your Lam Rim. And if you haven't looked at Pabunka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, Namdru Lajong, and you haven't looked at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, I really urge you to look at these blessed texts. And so many, 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 many other Lam Rims, but these are 2 that had a huge influence on me very early on, especially Pabunka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, in terms of tasting that I needed to get out of this situation that I was in as quickly as possible. Bless me first to realize that this excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. So when we see that Lord Atisha says, understand there are persons of 3 capacities because of their small, middling, and great capacity. There are 3 kinds of persons, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly distinguishing their individual characteristics. Now we're going to get into the small scope, which is know that those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. So those who want just a higher realm rebirth, that's what that means. So the person of small capacity just wants a higher realm rebirth. What should they do? What kind of practices should they do? And Namgyal Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche was so kind to always summarize it by saying, go for refuge to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, engage in ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtuous activities, and if you have engaged in a negativity, confess or acknowledge that downfall and apply the 4 opponent powers. So kind to give us this advice. These are the practices that we do contained within this scope that stanza from The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment was talking about, and these couple of stanzas from The Source of All My Good are talking about. So we're so fortunate that we can look at these and understand what are we talking about? Where are we talking about going to? We're talking about ending the lower realm rebirth and getting a higher realm rebirth. So the way to do that, we just mentioned. So this now begins the small scope, where it is know that for those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I've died, the things that I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrong of the many wrongs we do and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. So that ends the section on the small scope. Now, the medium scope, according to Lord Atisha, is those who seek peace for themselves alone, turning away from worldly pleasures and avoiding destructive actions, are said to be of middling capacity. So then Lama Tsongkhapa says, this according to Pabonka Rinpoche, begins the medium scope, the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. Why do we say the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity? Because they're in common with the medium scope and in common with the great scope. The teachings for medium shared in common with beings of medium capacity are in common with the great scope. So once we've realized the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, and we realize that we want to get out of the lower realms of cyclic existence by investigating what those lower realms are and looking at karma and reflecting on our future lives' potentials, then we begin to look at the whole ball of wax of cyclic existence and come to find out that it's not good. There's a suffering of suffering, suffering of change, and pervasive compounded suffering. 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings that we want to get out of. So when we learn about the truth of suffering at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma, we find out that no matter where we are in cyclic existence, we are suffering. There's nowhere to go in cyclic existence that isn't a state of suffering of one among the 3 types of suffering. So what we want to know is that fact. And if we know that fact, then we will know this fact, which begins the medium scope. Bless me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. Grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teachings. So here, this concludes the medium scope. And here, the medium scope, we find the teaching on the Four Noble Truths. We find the teaching on the 12 links of dependent origination. When we look at the great treatise in the stage of the path to enlightenment, the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity. We find the truth of origin of suffering. We find the truth of suffering, and we find the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, the 3 sufferings. We find the truth of origin of suffering in a general way of karma and afflictions, and we find the more expansive explanation of the 12 links of dependent origination. So all of those things are found within the teaching shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and I encourage you all to know what that means and what I'm talking about. If you don't, and if you do know what I'm talking about, I encourage you to know more about what I'm talking about. So that concludes the section on the teachings for beings of medium capacity. So the teachings for beings of great capacity that Lord Atisha says, those who through their personal suffering, so now I've recognized I got to get out of cyclic existence. It's plagued with 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings. I'm being thrust into a set of impure aggregates over and over and over again because of my self-grasping ignorance, really at the root. And so is everybody else. And you know, I've come to this conclusion through my practices that everybody's equally important. We'll talk more about that later. So those who through their own personal suffering truly want to end completely all the suffering of others are persons of supreme capacity. So the section that gets into the teachings for beings of great capacity now begins and goes through the teachings for beings of great capacity in terms of the perfection vehicle, of the perfection vehicle, and the teachings for beings of great capacity in terms of the resultant vehicle or the tantric vehicle. So the teachings for beings of great capacity are the Mahayana teachings. Mahayana is divided into 2, perfection vehicle and the tantric vehicle, or Vajrayana. Vajrayana is not separate from Mahayana. It's a category of Mahayana. A lot of confusion about that. Vajrayana, Tantrayana is a category of Mahayana, just like the perfection vehicle is. So we begin with the perfection vehicle, and then Lama Tsongkhapa gets into the tantric vehicle, both being under the heading for teachings of beings of great capacity, because both being under the heading of the Mahayana, the great vehicle. So we read what a person of supreme capacity is defined as. So a lot of times they'll say, what is the definition of a person of small capacity? Those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence. What's the definition of a person of medium capacity? Those who seek peace for themselves alone, turning away from worldly pleasures and avoiding destructive actions. What's the definition of a person of great capacity? Those who, through their personal suffering, truly want to end completely all of the suffering of others. Hold on, I have to do this puzzle thing. This may be our last time to be on this app, and I want to make sure I can share this with you. I'm also, Buddhist Center is also on YouTube, and if you go to Facebook under Tara Mantra, that's our Facebook page that we started when Rinpoche was alive, and you'll find these teachings there. And then on YouTube at Buddha's Center, one word, all of the teachings are later uploaded there. So you'll be able to find them. If we disappear off of TikTok, I hope that's not the case, but you'll be able to find these teachings in other places. So we now are at the great scope of the teaching. So under the Mahayana heading, beginning with the perfection vehicle, beginning with aspiring bodhicitta. So we've been talking about generating bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is the entrance into the Mahayana. So this is why we talk about aspiring bodhicitta here, because that's how you become a bodhisattva. You get aspiring bodhicitta. Once you have aspiring bodhicitta, you become a bodhisattva. You don't enter the Mahayana vehicle until you have aspiring bodhicitta. Mahayanists are bodhisattvas. If you're not a bodhisattva, you're not a Mahayanist. You can really aspire to be a Mahayanist, but someone who's a Mahayanist is a bodhisattva, has generated the mind that aspires to enlightenment. But the beauty is that we have this human basis, and the most fortunate thing about it is that from this basis, from this body that you and that I sit with right here and you sit with right there, we can, from this basis, generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment, realize ultimate bodhicitta, realize emptiness, and transform this impure body, speech, and mind into the jewel of a Buddha, as Shantideva says in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. So I have slipped and fallen into the sea of this suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, everyone my own mother, has fallen into, and grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. Bless me to see clearly that the wish itself is not enough, for if I am not well trained in the three moralities, I cannot become a Buddha. Grant me then a fierce resolve to master the bodhisattva vows. Grant that I may quickly gain the path where quietude and insight join together, one which quiets my mind from being distracted to wrong objects, the other which analyzes the perfect meaning in the correct way. Grant that once I practice well the path shared and become a vessel that is worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. That stanza starts the section on Tantrayana. So once we get to that, we're under the Mahayana heading still, and we get to Tantra. So we were under the perfection vehicle teachings, aspiring bodhicitta, then engaged bodhicitta, then the union of calm abiding and special insight. And these are all grounds and paths and teachings and so forth, the teaching shared in common with beings of small, medium capacity, and the teachings that are shared in common with the tantric vehicle in terms of beings of great capacity are the perfection vehicle teachings. So we would say the perfection vehicle teachings are the teachings that are shared in common. So this is why it says, once I've practiced well the paths shared. So the teachings shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, and the perfection vehicle teachings. So we have to understand, everyone, Tantrayana doesn't work unless you have bodhicitta and understand emptiness. It's not some swift thing that you can just jump in and you just get taken off because you're in the lucky group. No, 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 no. You're in the lucky group if you practice these stages and then jump in Tantra actually prepared so that it would work. Grant that once I practice well the path shared and become a vessel that's worthy, I enter with perfect ease the way of the diamond, highest of all ways, holiest door to come inside for the fortunate and good. The door into Tantrayana, of course, is an initiation. Bless me to know with genuine certainty that when I've entered thus the cause that gives me both the Thai attainment. So once I've taken initiation and I've entered into a mandala and decided to be a tantric practitioner, does that mean I can just behave badly? No. The cause that gives me both the high attainments is to keep my pledges and my vows most pure. Grant me to keep them even if it costs my life. What are my pledges and my vows? Not just the Tantra stuff. The Tantra is built on the Bodhisattva vow, that's built on the individual liberation vow, that's built on abstaining from the 10 non-virtuous activities. Bless me next to realize as well as I can the crucial points of both the steps, the essence of the secret ways. Grant me then to practice as the holy ones have spoken, putting all my effort in and never leaving off the practice of the 4 times highest that there is. Now we get to the third category of Pabonka Rinpoche's outline where it says that, a prayer for the removal of obstacles. I think it'll be clear when I read it. Bless me, grant me that the spiritual friend who shows me this good road and all my true companions in this quest live long and fruitful lives. Bless and grant me that the rain of obstacles, things within me and outside me that could stop me now, stop and end forever. Category 3. Category 4 is prayers for your future lives. In all my lives, may I never live apart from my perfect lamas. May I bask in the glory of the Dharma. May I fulfill perfectly every good quality of every level and path, and reach then quickly the place where I become myself, the one who holds the diamond. Okay. So we've been talking about bodhicitta. We've been talking about this stanza. I've slipped and fallen into the sea of the suffering life. Bless me to see that every living being, every one my own mother has fallen into. Grant me then to practice the wish for enlightenment, to take on myself the task of freeing them all. So what is so great about the mind that aspires to enlightenment? So let's read a couple of things about the mind that aspires to enlightenment that will maybe allow us to, see the excellent qualities of it and really, really be able to rejoice in the fact that we have an opportunity from right where we're sitting to be able to generate this mind that aspires to enlightenment. And we have the ability, meaning from this body that we're inhabiting at this very moment. Maybe we can't get bodhicitta from right where we're sitting unless we really sit there a very, very long time. But what's so great about bodhicitta? So from the sutra, the questions of the householder Viradatta Sutra, it says, if whatever merit there is in the spirit of bodhicitta had form, it would fill the entire vault of the sky and then exceed it. From the Buddha, were someone to fill the Buddha realms with jewels as numerous as the grains of sand of the Ganges and offer this to the protector of the world, far superior is the merit and offering of one who, joining his or her hands, reverently generates the mind of bodhicitta. There is no limit to the merit of this. And then we find in the commentary on the awakening mind by Arya Nagarjuna, this awakening mind is stated to be the highest ideal in the great vehicle. So with an absorbed, determined effort, generate this awakened mind to accomplish self and others' welfare. No other means exist in the world apart from the awakening mind. To date, the Buddhas saw no other means. So Arya Nagarjuna says, up until this date, right now, the Buddhas have found no other means. And we find in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, the moment an awakening mind arises in those fettered and weak in the jail of cyclic existence, they will be named a bodhisattva, child of the Sugatas, and will be revered by humans and gods of the world. And then from that same text, same chapter, first chapter, benefits of the awakening mind. It's like the supreme gold-making elixir, for it transforms the unclean body we have taken into the priceless jewel of a Buddha form, therefore firmly seize this awakening mind. So fortunate to have these teachings and that we have the ability to learn how to become Buddhas, because by doing so, we'll be able to cleanse our mind of all the worry and all the unhappy states and the caps on happiness and our unreliable states that we've ever had. The chronic disease from Panchen Losang Chuji Jetsun's Guru Puja, this chronic disease of cherishing myself is the cause of all unwanted suffering. Perceiving this, may I be inspired to blame, begrudge, and destroy this monstrous demon of self-cherishing. Cherishing my mothers and seeking to secure them in bliss is the gateway to infinite virtues. So this thing's so great. What's the method to get it? If I can get it, if I have this human basis and I'm in I'm in a human basis and I have a physical basis according to Panchen Son Andrapa's general meaning of perfection from which to be able to get the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And I have a mental basis also from which I have a human mind. So the human mind, I can get this mind that aspires to enlightenment. If I have various causes and conditions that I create for my mind to generate the result of the mind that aspires to enlightenment. So we've been looking at the practices that cause that to occur. We've been looking at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, specifically passed down from the extensive deeds lineage of from Buddha Shakyamuni to Lord Maitreya to Master Asanga, and then basically down through that lineage to us. And then there's the other lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Master Arya Manjushri, from Buddha Shakyamuni to Arya Manjushri to Arya Nagarjuna, down through Shantideva and the profound view lineage, equalizing, exchanging self with others practice that we'll talk about. And then you can actually combine these beautiful practices in one sitting once you get really good at knowing how to do it. And it'll be like a rocket ship to Bodhicitta. So this is really wonderful if we could take a rocket ship, right, to Bodhicitta. So let's go back and look at, so we don't have tons of time. That's okay. We're taking our time to really go through this as well as we can. So let's go back to Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. Let's kind of like try to get kind of tied back to kind of tie our mind back to what we're trying to really look at. And that's the mind that aspires to enlightenment, why and how and so forth. So it says, we're just going to stanza 10 of Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. Next, beginning with an attitude of love for all living beings, consider beings, excluding none, suffering in 3 bad rebirths, suffering, birth, death, and so forth. Then, since you want to free these beings from the suffering of pain, from suffering the cause of suffering, arouse immutably the resolve to attain enlightenment. And then it says the qualities of developing such an aspiration are fully explained by Maitreya in the Array of Trunks Sutra. And then also there's the sutra requested by Viradatta that's quoted, that we already quoted when we were talking about the benefits of bodhicitta. And it says, having learned about the infinite benefits of the intention to gain full enlightenment, the benefits of bodhicitta, by reading the sutra or listening to a teacher, arouse it repeatedly to make it steadfast. So we're learning how to actually make it happen. And we've been looking at the 7-point cause and effect. And we've been looking at the pre-step of it, which was equanimity. So we need that because it says next, in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, beginning with an attitude of love for all living creatures, consider beings, excluding none. So we're going to exclude some if we don't have equanimity. If we have a biased attitude, we have exclusion. That's an exclusionary attitude. So according to Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, this attitude gets developed from a place of equanimity and non-bias, because it says of love for all living creatures. Now, how do you generate this mind? Well, you exclude no one when you generate this mind. When you're thinking of, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, that says all sentient beings, for the sake of all sentient beings. So when we're considering those beings that we want to free who are suffering in various states, that means all of them. And we have to equally want to benefit them and be willing to have an open mind towards every single one of them without any bias. And that comes from the practice of equanimity. That comes from being able to do these practices over and over and over again to get to the point where we feel we have this non-bias, and then checking it as we go through the next steps of recognizing sentient beings as our mother, remembering their kindness, and wishing to repay their kindness. We know, and when we look at illuminating the intent, which is a commentary on Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara, and in Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara, it talks about compassion being important in the beginning, the middle, and the end. And when we look at the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, we see that everything in that is either a cause for generating compassion or a result of compassion. So we see that the things leading up to compassion, equanimity, recognizing sentient beings as our mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness, and love through the force of attraction, all of these things become causes for compassion. And then altruism, or the extraordinary attitude, and bodhicitta become the results of compassion. So we see this compassionate attitude, we see as the root of the Mahayana. And Chandrakirti sees it as such a precious jewel that he bows down to it, that compassion for all sentient beings cycling in cyclic existence like buckets on a water wheel, because of self-grasping ignorance, really, because of the view of the perishing aggregates, starting with this view of the perishing aggregates that sees I and mine as being intrinsically existent. So we see that this compassion that we're trying to generate is towards all sentient beings, and we're generating it, being able to generate it towards all of them, wanting them to be free from suffering towards all of them by generating a non-biased attitude of equanimity. And then from that, being able to begin to create in our minds this idea that beings are all lovable, every single one of them in the universe. So we're going from one point of saying, hey, I got an open mind, I'd equally kind of work with all of you, to being able, through this practice of recognizing beings as your mother, remembering their kindness, and wishing to repay their kindness, this process of cognitive transformation that gets us to the point where we view all beings as lovable. And when we view beings as lovable, we want them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Viewing someone as lovable, we want them to have happiness and the causes of happiness, because that's what love means. When we love someone in Buddhism, it doesn't mean you're mine. It means we want you to have happiness and the causes of happiness. In order to view all beings as lovable, we have to create an attitude of attraction towards them that's created through recognizing them all as our mothers, and then recognizing what that would mean and how kind they were based on that, and being able to believe it, and being able to have an open mind enough to proceed with the actual meditations, because you've recognized that everyone has had these uncertain relationships with you since beginningless time, and is equally a basis of person that you should have an open mind about, in terms of recognizing them as the most kind person to you in the universe. So we look at these practices of equanimity that then can allow us to give rise to an attitude that we see in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, when he quotes Kamalashila's second stages of the path, the stages of the path. He says, moistened by love, your mind becomes friable, fertile soil. When you plant the seed of compassion, it grows easily and bountifully. Therefore, after you infuse your mind with love, cultivate compassion. The love mentioned here views living beings with affection, as if they were your dear children. By cultivating impartiality, you eliminate the unevenness in attitude that comes from the bias of your attachment and hostility, and your mind becomes like a good field. Kamalashila says here that if you moisten your mind with the water of love, which views all living beings with affection, and you then plant the healthy seed of compassion, you will easily generate great compassion. Understand this to be an extremely important point. And I don't mean to harp on this, But when we look at why are we doing all this? Why am I trying to think of beings as my mother and thinking how kind they were? Because I'm trying to generate affection for them. I'm trying to find them as some being, every being in the universe as lovable, as being that I want to have happiness and the causes of happiness, as a being that I want to free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Not because it'd be really cool to be able to do it, because it's the way to undo the tightness of my mind and have it expand to everyone in the universe. And when that expansion happens, my happiness expands. It's not just because I want to be a good citizen. There's a part of this that as I am able to love more and more beings, my happiness, my mind becomes less and less tight and less agitated by some people and things that they do. Less and less agitated. I'm able to just freely flow to want them to have happiness and want them to be free from suffering. And when they're engaging in something towards me that's negative, I say, oh dear, they're engaging in something that's going to cause them more suffering. This is not painful for me because they're yelling at me. It's painful to me because their suffering is my suffering. Wow, that's a huge thing to have happen. This is not a little mind we're talking about. We say Buddhism, love and compassion. The kind of compassion we're talking about starts with this evenness that we couldn't even imagine. And from this evenness, we've proven that our mind has had beginningless moments, and we've had beginningless births, and we've had beginningless relationships with all sentient beings. And all sentient beings have been our mothers. We've established this all with logic and reasoning. And we've come to this conclusion that every single sentient being in the universe is our mother, not because of blind faith, because we've used so many types of logic and reasoning. And we've looked at a syllogism when we said that syllogism is correct because it has a property of the subject, mode, that's correct. And because it has a forward pervasion mode, that's correct. And it has a reverse pervasion mode, that's correct. And if it fulfills all of those three modes, then it's a correct sign. It's a syllogism that's making a correct proof. There's a probative argument that's there. There's a thesis that's there. There's a probundum that has been proven. A probundum is a statement to be proved. And if we have the three modes, it means that there's a reason there that has proven that statement. And we use syllogisms to prove the fact that we have beginningless lives. And we have used syllogisms to prove the fact that all sentient beings are our mother, father, sister, uncle, brother, roommate, etc. So we've done that work to prove that. And then next week, we'll get into let's remember their kindness, because what are we trying to do? We're trying to have affection for all beings. We're trying to feel like a magnet drawn to metal when we see every being in the universe, even someone we would have normally aversion for. What does aversion mean? Pushing away. What does a magnet do? Pull towards. If we want to become a Buddha, we have to learn how to magnetize ourselves towards all beings. Now we have bias. Now we see these people on the TV or these other political traditions or these people that we dislike, and we have all this bias, and we are the opposite of a magnet. You know, there's some things that when you put a magnet next to a magnet, doesn't it push it away? That's how we are now. We have to learn how to make all sentient beings, every single one of them in the universe, into metal. And how is that? That metal is a being we would find lovable. And if we see that being as lovable, then us as a magnet will be attracted to them. I think that makes sense. I hope that makes sense, because that's how this works. It doesn't work through magic. This works through a cognitive transformation, through studies, through reasoning, through analysis, through seeing the benefits of the mind that aspires to enlightenment, seeing the benefits of compassion, finding out how to get compassion, finding out how to get love, finding out every method we can get our hands on to make this mind occur, because it's the only entrance into the Mahayana, and it's the only thing that will push us into Buddhahood with the realization of emptiness as its partner, the union of method and wisdom. We're going to need that bodhicitta to push us towards our goal, the gas that gets us towards our goal. And we're going to need this wisdom realizing emptiness to actually be the liberating path that gets us there. So I hope this made sense. I hope that you can learn how to generate okay, again, 7-point cause and effect instruction passed down from Lord Maitreya to Master Asanga, down through the extensive deeds lineage to Lord Salimpa, Master Atisha, Lord Atisha, down through Drone Tompa, through the Tibetan tradition, and all these different masters, and now from me to you, from Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche to me, from Geshe Dorje Damdula Rinpoche to me, from Geshe Umzala Geshe Aga Rinpoche to me, from Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche to me, His Holiness the Dalai Lama to me. A lot of instructions have been given to me on this topic, so I'm so fortunate to be able to share it with you. I hope it's made sense this evening, and let's do some concluding prayers and dedicate the immense amount of virtue that we've created. We have to have an immense amount of merit to be able to gather today to look at this teaching. So let's dedicate, and so we don't, so we can kind of keep the merit train going and make sure that every virtue we've created in every moment of this teaching becomes the cause for our Buddhahood. Let's dedicate it. But first, let's do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer as a thanksgiving for this teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Losang Drapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I made, may they be purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva. Om Benzasattva Samaya Manipalaya Benzasattva Seno Bhatishtadita Meva Vasu Tokaya Meva Vasu Vugaya Meva Anurakta Meva Vasava Siddhi Meva Raja Sava Kama Sichume Kitam Chirankuru Om Ha Bhagavan Sava Tata Kata Benzama Memoka Benzabhava Mahasamaya Sapa Ah Om Ve. May we always be protected by Paul and Lamo. Jarama 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 Tunja Kalaraja Moramo Aja Daja Tunja Rula Hong Jo Hong. And again, if this is the last time that I'm able to do a live because of the circumstances, please go to the YouTube channel, Buddha's Center, and you'll be able to find these recordings. And you can go to www.buddhacenter.com. You'll be able to find more information about myself, my teachers, etc. And you find the keys to the city. And if you go to Tara Mantra on Facebook, I'm now just resharing anytime I see teachings that I feel are really qualified teachers that are my teachers, I'm resharing them on the Tara Mantra Facebook page. And you'll see teachings by Geshe Ngawam Pendela. You'll see teachings by Geshe Yeshe Tapkela. And you'll see announcements for teachings about Geshe Dorje Damdula, my current teacher in the Nalanda Master's Program, who's one of the most skilled teachers in the universe, I believe. So Geshe Dorje Damdul from the Tibet House, New Delhi. If this is one of the last times I could speak with you, I feel it's my duty to make sure you know that information because it's really important to know. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all-powerful, Avalokiteshvara, Chen Rezig, Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara's end. Again, that was a long life prayer for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish-fulfilling jewel in our world, Lord Chen Rezi, breathing the same air as us. We're so blessed to have the Nalanda tradition that he promotes so well, the Sanskrit tradition that was passed down through those incredible masters, the extensive deeds and profound view lineages. And I really encourage you all to learn more and more about that. A long life prayer of supplication to Namgyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, who I see someone from Malaysia is on, who is also a student of Namgyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. It's such a small world. I can't believe I'm speaking with someone on the other side of the world who was in the presence of Namgyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, as well as my other teacher, Kensur Lobsang Gyatso Rinpoche. Drepung Losaling Kensur, he's passed on, just like Namgyal Kensur Geshe Wandak Rinpoche passed on. But I actually translated for both of those teachers. Both of those teachers went to Malaysia and were connected to Tan Bong Beng, who's now on the live. So it's so incredible. Rinpoche, Kensur Geshe Wandak Rinpoche asked me to continue the Lam Rim teachings in his honor. He said, when I pass on, continue these teachings. And I feel blessed when I see folks on the Zoom right now that I know knew Kensur Geshe Wandak. There's someone on the other side of the country that could, from me in the United States, I'm watching on Zoom, that knew Kensur Geshe Wandak Rinpoche 20 years ago. Oh, Singapore. I see. Tan Bung Bang is from Singapore. I apologize, La. Thank you for informing me. So you'd met Kensur Geshe Wandak Rinpoche in Malaysia. I knew that he had gone there, so I made an incorrect assumption. Thank you for correcting me. But I see someone on the other side of the United States that knew Kensur Rinpoche 20 years ago. And Karen, I know that you knew Kensur Rinpoche for so many years, and we spent so much time in the same room where I was translating and you were listening to Kensur Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, and it just makes my heart just feel so good that I was able to fulfill Rinpoche's request and actually get to talk to the students he wanted me to talk to. And I just want to say thank you for allowing me to do that. I don't get a lot of chance to speak with you personally directly, or I don't take the chance, maybe should I say. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being there for me. And what do I mean by that? For me to be able to share these teachings and to be able to advance in my spiritual path, you allow that to dependently originate. And I depend on you so much for that. And I just want to thank you. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Kensur Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om Ahom, Om Ahom, Om Ahom. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet, Lord Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from our lips like your lips, like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound is stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world to take care of us in all our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you again so much, everyone. I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing all of you next week in one way or another. And I hope you implement these teachings into your life. I could really give another 2-hour talk about this because I love these teachings so much, and I found them so effective for me and effective in taking someone who had such a mind of an unpleasant, worried, angry mind and made it just a little bit better enough for me to be 100% convinced that these teachings work. Thank you so much, and I hope they work for you too. They only work, though, if you engage in study, reflection, and meditation. This isn't just a simplistic thing that one stanza someone's going to tell you and bless you and it's going to be magic. You're going to have to put in the work. Nothing awesome ever came from tiny bits of work. You have to put in big causes to get big results. We're talking about trying to have perfect love, compassion, skillful means, perfect wisdom, perfect caring for others. To try to make our minds into a mind like that, it's going to take an immense amount of causes, but it's worth it. And those causes exist in our world. And your mind is the kind of mind that can transform because it's in the nature of clear light that's unsullied. And the stains that are in it right now are adventitious. They aren't the nature of our mind. Our mind has beautiful qualities. Those beautiful qualities just have to be perfected. They haven't been perfected yet because we haven't put in the work to make them perfect. The Buddha put the work in and made them perfect. Put in the work we have to put in to make our mind perfect. Put in the work, and you too will become a Buddha, just like Shakyamuni was able to, in reliance upon the exact same instructions. Our teachers don't leave anything out. The teachers who give you partial instructions leave things out. The teachers who give you extensive instructions don't leave anything out, give you the extensive causes that are necessary to become a Buddha, and you will become enlightened because you have this mind that can be, you have a human basis that can be enlightened, and we have examples of beings like Milarepa in our history that in one lifetime with a body became a Buddha. Thank you. Enough out of me. See you next time. Now I have to